So good morning, everyone. Lovely to have all of you here at one of these sessions, which I'm, of course, passionately, enthused about. This is on women in sports and women in the nation. And to make sure this is not like all the typical inimical women and women empowerment kind of conversations, I just wanted to tell you that this is not one of those socially and politically correct things to do, have a panel on women. No. I am particularly taken up by the fact that, unlike any other category or industry, uh, women and their impact in a particular category or a particular industry, while in every other category is fairly internal, right? It's about making sure we provide platforms which allows a lot more inclusivity, brings their unique strengths to the fore, but it's fairly internal, the impact. Sports has an amazing external influence, right? And I've said this 100 times before. Anytime a woman appears in the Times of India front page or in Star Sports 30 Seconds, the sheer impact is on thousands of women, thousands of girls. We are helping all of them get to where they want to be. So, without much ado, I, Shabnam Panjwani, also co-chair the Sports and Youth Affairs Committee, would like to take this quickly, move on, and introduce each and every one of this amazing set of panelists. I'm so happy to note that a women's panel doesn't only have these amazing women who have all made their mark and are making their mark, but also men, empathetic men, encouraging men, men who are able to provide a platform to allow all of these women's ambitions and aspirations to come to fore, make it visible for them. Yeah. So, okay, great. Let me start with the first panelist, and here he goes. Yes. First of all, I'd like to introduce to you Ms. Sharda Ugra. Sharda, can we have your beautiful face on the screen?
Hi.
She's been
Hi,
a
Shabnam.
sports journalist for over 25 years, one of the first women sports journalists, I hear, Sharda. And I can imagine the kind of experiences you've had in a bastion dominated by men. She's worked across a range of media formats, right? Print, TV, you name it. Also across countries, Australia, China, Iran, and Spain. And she has a special proclivity towards cricket, again, something that I find very, very interesting. Welcome, Shada. Lovely to have you here and listen to what you have to say in this session that I'm hoping is going to be very, very informative. The next person has been described at various points as the golden best boxer, just the age of 18. She's been anointed ambassador of Nizamabad, Telangana, which is her home state. This junior world boxing champion of several and winner of several golds and silvers on both the domestic as well as the international arena is a young, feisty, confident, athlete and India's future Olympic medal prospect. Please welcome this young and explosive talent, Nikhat Zareen, India's flyweight champion boxer. Nikhat, may we have you on the screen, please?
Hello, ma'am.
Thank you, Nikhat. Lovely to see you.
Thank
Um,
you.
I'll just now move to Rushdie. Rushdie Warli is the CEO of Inspire Institute of Sports. It's IIS is a JSW initiative which is focused on promoting and providing world-class sports training for Indian athletes, essentially to maximize the potential. Also, very interestingly, Inspire is in supporting India's aspiration to really win international medals, with a focus on the Olympic space. Rishti, of course, has over 20 years of experience in coaching, talent identification, and development. And his career has been in South Africa and New Zealand and now in India. I must add to his credit, in South Africa as a swimming coach, the program that he managed led to a total of 28 Commonwealth Games medals and 16 World Championship medals, along with 3 Olympic medals. So, a great welcome to you, Rashti. Please come on board.
Hi, Shabnam. Thank you very much for having me on this panel.
Hi, Rashti. The next panelist really doesn't need too much introduction. Anyone who has seen IPL, and I believe there is not too many Indians who haven't. He's the man who is in charge of Star Sports. He makes sure that India's biggest entertainment grows bigger every year. I mean, unbelievable, but yes, it keeps on growing bigger. Please welcome Sanjog Gupta, who is also chairperson of FICCI Sports and Youth Affairs Committee and convener of Turf 2020. Sanjog's career also spans over 2 decades. Half of it has been in the general news and journalism, and the other half in sports. He's also been credited with reimagining cricket coverage in India. So while cricket, TRPs were dropping, and you may not believe this, but it was a few years ago, he's been one of those who's thought of a complete different way of looking at sports, particularly cricket. He's also worked closely with the government on Khelo India, again enabling the broadcast and the of this event, which is an annual encouraging space for new and young talent. So, hi Sanjog, lovely to have you on board and to hear from you.
Thanks, Shabnam. Thanks for having me. Currently, I think the only introduction that I'd like to have is an ambassador of women's sport in this country, and that's good enough.
Lovely. Thank you. I think that's a great place to place you. And therefore, so much more expectation, Sanjog. And may I please have Neha Rastogi on board with us. Neha is the founder of Words Work. She has over 15 years experience in public relations, corporate brand, communications, and media planning. Neha started Words Work in 2009 and has spearheaded several successful communications campaigns, in large part in the sports arena. Public diplomacy to sports is again a great space to be in. She has considerable expertise in this space, and having her on board would be a wonderful addition to this team. Hi, Neha. Can we have
Hi,
you?
Shakti. Thank you so
visible?
much.
Thank you. So now that we've all convened, I am going to be toggling between phone and laptop, so do excuse me. But I thought, let us start with some of the more inspiring conversations. And I'd like to have Nikhat, to have you come on board. Just a minute. Okay, so I'm on both platforms. Let me just try and figure out where to get it. Sorry. Okay. I've often propagated the story, Nikhat, that when boys come home from school, no, they drop their school bag and go out to play football, cricket, jo bhi. When the girl or probably the sister comes home from school same time, वो बैग तो ड्रॉप करते हैं, but she has to go home and do झाड़ू पोछा or make a couple of rotis. In your case, the whole situation has been amazing because you have to not only, handle this kind of space in a small city, but you also had a lot of opposition to taking on the sport that you are known for. Can you tell us a little bit about your life and how did you get over it to become where you are? All yours.
Sure. Firstly, good morning to everyone, and thank you for having me here. And Yes, people think that boxing is a male dominating game, and people think लड़कियां बस घर पे काम करते हुए अच्छी लगती है, because they think girls are meant to be only get married. And so and I belong from a orthodox society where people don't allow their daughters and girls to go out their homes. And in my case, even I also got a lot of criticism from the society when I joined boxing, because being a Muslim girl, people think that Muslim girls are meant to be in parda. No, they can't go out. But fortunately, my father was also an athlete, so he supported me always. And since childhood, we are four siblings, and since childhood, I was very stubborn, and I was like a tomboyish, and I never used to think that there is a difference between girl and boys. I always think that we both are equal, and we women are equally strong as men. And but in my case, when I joined boxing, people used to taunt me that कि अरे ये तो मर्दों का game है. If you do boxing, you will spoil your face, then who will marry you? So and so comments they used. But took seriously to them, because it's my life. I always my rules, and my life and my rules. You know, for,
I think Nikhat may be facing connectivity issues. I don't know if Shabnam is still locked down as well.
Sorry,
Shabnam, I think Nikhat's internet is a bit choppy, so you may want to go to the next question.
oh, okay, sorry. I thought I was the one who was having a problem.
No, I think Nikhat's internet connectivity is poor currently.
Okay. Okay, cool. So then why don't we move on? We'll probably come back to Nikhat in a bit. Really, I wanted to hear from her story, but I'm just saying, Sanjog, let's move to you. Nikhat back?
Not yet. I think she's trying to log on, but
sorry for the disturbance.
yeah, I think she's back on now. Nikhat, can you hear us?
Yeah, I can hear you. Sorry for the disturbance.
Yeah, so why don't you continue? You had left us hanging on a very interesting line, which was "My life, my rules." So why don't you continue from there?
Yeah. So yes, I believe that I found my biggest support system in my
Hi,
journey,
Nikhat, can you
because
hear
he
us
always
now?
been very supportive. Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay.
Sorry. So in my journey, my father has been my biggest support system. He always supported me at in any case. People used to come and tell him that ki, "Arey beti hai, don't allow her, don't send her into boxing, because boxing mardon ka game hai." But he never listened to them. He always supported me, and today whatever I am, it's because of my father. So I all give credit to my father only.
How did your father get around to doing this? Because I know, I mean, a lot of these spaces where you get encouragement, many a times we hear it's the fathers who discourage their daughters from doing what your father did. What brought him to this space? I mean, how did he look at Nikhat and say, no, beti ko, I'll take her forward?
Yeah. So my father has also been an athlete, because being an athlete, he understood my feelings. And when he was young, his family never supported him, because he's the eldest of all the brother. And his mother used to tell him कि बड़ा बेटा है, घर की जिम्मेदारी भारी है, so you have to look after your family. ये सब खेल वेल को साइड में रखो, you have to focus on your job, on your family. So because of that, उन्होंने अपने स्पोर्ट को इतना सीरियस नहीं लिया, उसके लिए he have to left his sport, and then he have to look after his family. And when he got married, and then I was born, and when I was in 6th class, and I have participated in sports
Hi, Nikhat.
high school. Got to know about me that he thought कि no, there is something in my daughter जो मैं नहीं कर पाया, I'll make sure कि मेरी बेटी करेगी. So that since then he supported me.
Thanks, Nikhat. I wanted to maybe ask Rashdi, as South African Development Coach of the Year awarded twice to him. It's a different country, right? Partly developed. And you would possibly have seen great, both differences and similarities, and how women and men athletes differ in their approach there.
Yeah.
And the entire parental ecosystem in that country vis-a-vis ours. And you heard Nikhat speak. What was the difference? And that's the first question between both our countries. And what is the difference between the men and the women athletes, approach to the sport or this particular space? Can you throw some light on this, please?
Yeah, I mean, in South Africa, I mean, I grew up in a very, sort of a very exciting time in South Africa, and it spanned both my my youth and the beginning of my professional career. And we were just coming out of apartheid, and as you know, anything around discrimination in apartheid was extremely, was extremely sensitive, and that included gender inequality. So, in South Africa, you started seeing a very big push in terms of, creating more gender equity, both not only in sport but across all sectors of society. In South Africa, you would see because the system is probably a little bit more open. There's a lot of encouragement for young female athletes to go out and explore their careers. So, and in fact, most of the results in South Africa, a lot of the results that we were seeing were coming from young female athletes, especially in swimming. I think there's just a general overview of encouragement of sport within South Africa. Having said that, coming to India, it was very surprising to see, and I've been here since 2016 only, but to be honest with you, you've got this perception that there is a situation where, girls are not encouraged to play sport and not encouraged to explore this particular avenue. Having said that, when we opened our doors in 2017, we found that, surprisingly, there was a very high percentage of females that had come to the institute that we had scouted. We didn't expect all of them to take up the opportunity. We brought their parents in with them right at the outset, so that they could see the facility, what we were providing for them, and understand what it is that we would be doing with in this particular case, I mean, we're speaking about females, with the young daughters in terms of developing them and giving them opportunities. And up to today, you still see that our ratio is probably 45% of female athletes within IAS. In our environment, we don't, I mean, what we provide to our male athletes, we provide to our female athletes, in absolute equality. Having said that, we do look at it and we're very cognizant of the fact that, there are certain things that we need to provide in terms of our female athletes that has come to light, especially over the last period, to prolong their career, in terms of female athlete health, which we monitor on an ongoing basis. We're very excited about the program, the project that we've developed around female athlete health, taking into account, things like RADS and, menstrual dysfunction. And that is purely, from our perspective, in order to prolong their careers and allow them to fulfill the potential rather than giving up at a very young age because of physiological conditions that could actually have been prevented.
Sorry, so what you're also saying is that you are able to build sustenance and have them remain committed regarding to sports, irrespective of whatever familial or societal pressures, right? And you have the platform that allows that to happen, Rashni.
Yes, we do. Yes, we do. And I think part of that, we look at it very holistically from a female athlete point of view. We ensure, we provide them with not only the sport context, we provide them with the educational context. And as I said, one of the things that is front and center in the news right now would be, you saw what happened with Mary Cain in the US. We ensure that, we work with our athletes to, in terms of educating, especially our female athletes, in terms of educating and providing interventions that allow them to continue their sport. If we don't do things like this, there's a danger through various physiological, deficiencies, and if not taken care of, whereby the athletes start, picking up injuries, stress fractures, different kinds of weight problems. And we're very much, we've got a very strong a weight category sports in the wrestling, boxing, and judo in particular. So I think, we work very hard in terms of educating the athletes as to what is required for them to be a professional athlete. And I think, if I'm not mistaken, the project that we're running is probably the only such one in India right now. And we're certainly hoping to publish that further down the line in terms of our international publications and as to what we're doing here within IAS.
I'd just like to move to Sanjog, as you said, Ambassador of Women's Sports. Sanjog, media probably plays a significant role in making sure women put down their balloons and pick up hockey sticks. Can you tell us about what you and Star Sports, particularly both of you, are doing to, make this happen and make it successful a movement and change?
I think there are a few different vectors to this, to the answer that I have to your question, Shabnam. I think, firstly, just in terms of the journey that women's sport has had in the last 5 years, and Sharda is someone who's been very closely involved as an observer and perhaps a proponent of women in media and women on field as well, would testify. Women's sport has actually come a long way in the last 5 years. There has been a move forward. There has been progress. Has it been enough? Perhaps not. But there has been significant move forward. Sharda was and there are two parts to this. One is, of course, what's happening on field, and then what's happening behind the scenes. Just to give you some numbers, the women's IPL challenge that was recently concluded, and again, credit to BCCI for hosting that while hosting the IPL as well, given the kind of complexities involved in hosting a tournament which involves players, match officials, etc., and that too in UAE, saw a growth in viewership of close to 140%. I'm comparing it to the last edition. 105 million viewers tuned in to watch the women's IPL challenge, those 4 games that were played, which just goes to show from where we were perhaps 5 years back, and Sharda again will testify to this, where many women's World Cup games were not even broadcast, let alone watched. We are in a situation where there is a women's IPL challenge that is being watched by 105 million viewers. The women's World Cup final, the last World Cup final that was played between India and England, was actually one of the highest rated sports events of the year. Not a women's sport event, but sports events including all kinds of all sports. We've seen vectors of women's version of Kabaddi, which was played a few years back, to women's a vector of women's football that was opened last year. So there is growth, and we've seen the emergence of individual athletes like Nikhat, who stand as inspiration to women around the country, and whose story, when unfolds on screen, inspires so many more girls to pick up sport to begin with, and perhaps helps in breaking that adoption barrier that exists for sports in our country, and that adoption barrier exists in schools, it exists amongst parents, it exists in society and the people around them. So I think there is an inspiration aspect to this. The second vector, which is the off-field vector, you just mentioned Sharda was, the first female journalist in sport. I remember in 2014 when we introduced Isa Guha to commentate on an India-England test match. India was touring England and there was a Lord's test match, and we introduced Isa Guha as a commentator. There was, almost mass rejection, and I think it required Star to show the gumption that it showed and the confidence that it showed in Isa's abilities, not just as a woman commentator, but as a commentator, to persist with her, work with her, nurture her talents, nurture her capabilities, and get to a point where you now have women commentators competing for space in the commentary box with male commentators for men's cricket, not just for women's cricket, but for men's cricket. I remember in 2015 when Mayanti started hosting our cricket coverage, there were all kinds of words used to describe her, which I would not like to use here. Not giving her enough credit for what she brought to the screen. And the reason why we wanted her to front our coverage was because we wanted to break this, sort of boys' domain or boys' dressing room kind of environment. And we wanted to bring a voice into the mix who would be very different and would stand for half the fans for the game in this country, because most people don't realize, but 45 to 48% of viewership for cricket in this country is women, or female, between kids and adult females. So what we've tried to do, both on the field by virtue of showcasing stories that inspire girls to pick up sport and inspire women to stay invested in sport, to actually creating a space for women to come in and be a part of sport at large, not just be a part of women's sport. Those, I think, have been the two vectors along which we've tried to move the needle on women representation and more diversity and inclusion in the world of cricket and in the world of sport.
Thank you, Sanjog. Thank you, Sanjog. I think your invocation of Sharda's both what she's done, being there right in the beginning of it all, having traversed that journey, and being very confident in the fact that she has the experience and the expertise to talk on sports, and therefore then be accepted. Sharda will be
we'd love to hear how you manage that, because it is in all forms and fields very difficult for the woman to begin to establish her experience and expertise, or not only establish, be accepted. So great to, if you could put on your video, anyone who's speaking, be great to have you on video, and love to hear your views.
Is my video
Yeah,
on?
we can see you,
I think
Sharda. We can see you. So.
Great. Okay. Thanks, thanks to Sanjog for many flattering references to me. But let's just say that I go by what Nikhat said: "My life, my rules." That's the way all of us tend to be. All people, I think, who want to do something that has not been done before, and largely, I think it wasn't being in the sports media over this period of time has sort of helped me see the way how the sports media, how athletes, what they go through, what women go through, and you understand almost like the double burden that women athletes face. Whenever I'm asked, what's it been like, I have to say it's been very good. It's been largely incident free, or maybe at some point, even Nikhat will understand this. You just become blinkered. You're not looking left, right. You're just going ahead and doing what you have to do, which is the only way you can most possibly do it. Because if you're taking your validation or acceptance from other people, then you're never going to get anywhere in that sense. So I just find that, and of course, at one point I just did a random audit. I sent a couple of emails and said, how many women are there writing sport or working in the sports industry in print, not television as much, just writing about it, being on copy desks in newspapers, magazines, websites. And I asked one of the guys who runs the sports federation. I said, "How many do you think there are?" He said, "Oh, about 25." I said, "Oh, okay, fine." So I sent a mail out to all the women that I know, and what the answer that came back to me was more than 60. And I was so happy to hear that number, because like Sanjog is saying, it's not like we are not there. We are half the population. And there is in this new generation of women, say 21st century girls, women, there is a certain confidence that, say, my generation didn't have, and we took a longer time. And how much I'm talking right now, people just look at me who saw me when I was a young reporter starting out in Bombay, and they said, "What happened to you? You used to be so quiet." So that "you used to be so quiet" thing has now gone. There's no sort of so this generation, it's almost like it's the same thing which you'll see with all the athletes coming through. Women athletes in the past used to be quiet, reserved. They never talked. Their coach did the talking. I think Rishdi will also be able to give you examples that when girls just come into to institutions, they're very shy. And now you have Sania Mirza wearing her T-shirt saying that well-behaved women rarely, rarely well-behaved women never make history. So there's been that change as well, and it's been great to see. It's not that there are no barriers, and the barriers they do exist. There is a lot of control that is exercised on women athletes by, say, parents, husbands supporting people around them. That still goes on. And like Sanjog said, to hear the numbers about the women's T20 challenges, I'm astonished. I'm just so delighted to hear those numbers. Hopefully, there'll be more of that. I think we need to see enough of women playing all kinds of sport on TV as much as we can. I think that becomes a big driver. That's a big driver for how change came in cricket, how badminton exploded. But you need to see enough of that happening. More girls playing more sports, as often as you can. And we love the boys playing the sports as well, but more girls playing more sports on TV.
Thank you, Sharda. It was very nice to hear that you didn't have, was generally incident free, or the fact that you chose to ignore any incident that would come your way and just, soldered on. So hats off to you. Neha, as a PR and comms professional, I mean, you are currently, sorry. I'm sorry, yeah. You are currently in a place. Can you hear me? I'm sorry,
Yes.
I'm unmuted. Hold on. Yes.
We can hear you.
You've seen male athletes, right? It's predominantly male athletes in brand stories, whether it's sponsorships, endorsements, ambassadors. But in the last 5 years, like Sanjog was pointing out, the tide is changing. Do you feel that companies and brands are seeing women more as powerful and impactful brand ambassadors? And what is that aspect of them that they are willing to look at and therefore support? Can you sort of any light on that?
Absolutely. Shabnam, you're absolutely right. And so is Sanjog. I think the last couple of years have been phenomenal as far as women athletes are concerned. And I can tell you over the last, say, 10 or 15 years that I've been in sports, initially the front pages or the main stories were centered around main athletes. But I think in the last 5 years, performance pays, right? And I think a lot of individual female athletes have done exceedingly well. And that has really led to a lot of people opening their eyes, including brands, opening their eyes to the fact that here are these personalities who are so multidimensional that it works in many ways for them. So a lot of brands are looking at it. A lot of media, which probably didn't even look at sports, is now looking at sports. If you look at the December cover of Vogue, you'll see the women's hockey team on that cover. And I think that just speaks volumes for how inspiring women in sports can be now. And I think a lot of it is to do with just more awareness around them, all across media as well as the brands. And I think everyone has been very, very encouraging to make this a fairly more level playing field. And the fact that the brands can allow these personalities who show a lot more to offer many times around than possibly their male counterparts as well. So it's been a good last few years for sure.
Thank you, Neha. I just wanted to do a quick roundup with each and every one of you. And I thought, again, I'll start with Nikhat. Nikhat, there are many 13-year-olds that are looking up at you, right? Looking up and to you. 13, 14-year-old girls inspired by what you've done. If you have to give them one line, one statement, what will it be that will help them, both make up their mind or be confident that they will be able to tackle whatever comes their way? What can you tell them? Nikhat, you may be on
Just want to tell
mute.
all
Yeah.
that,
Yeah, sorry.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you now.
Okay. Yeah. So I just want to tell all the girls out there, who want to pursue sport and who want to achieve something in sport, that don't be afraid of anything. Just go for it. Challenges, you have to face some challenges but that doesn't mean that you just give up easily. Everyone has a story. Some get success very soon and some get after so much. Doesn't mean. I want everyone to work hard and stay determined and stay dedicated toward their work, and one day their hard work will pay. Want to keep in yourself.
Thank you. Thank you, Nikhat. Words that I think 13-year-olds and 14-year-olds will take ahead with them. Rushdi, it'd be interesting to have a take from you on the entire corporate side of bringing sports, of course, to the fore. I mean, public-private participation has always been there, but more and more companies and organizations and brands are making it a purposeful decision to both fund sports and fund women in sports. Any take on that from your?
Yeah. I mean, IAS firstly. I mean, we're a CSR-driven organization, so we see a lot of obviously the year's been challenging with COVID and a lot of the money going towards COVID, but we're starting to see that come back now. And a lot of our donations have come from many of the corporates in terms of the in terms of the CSR act that is in place at the moment. And we've been very fortunate that many of our our corporates have included. Some of them have specifically said we want to fund women's sport. IndusInd Bank would have been one of those particular, corporates, and they specifically say we want to do more for women empowerment as well as education. So we're very keen to see that. The return on investment in terms of women's sport has been phenomenal, and particularly at IAS, I mean, we've some of the best results have come from our women. And when we showcase those results, we've got a good story to tell about some of them. The very first medals that IAS has won at international events would have been coming from female athletes, whether that would be the Youth Olympic Games or whether that would be the Cadet World Championships in wrestling. So a lot of you are seeing a move from corporates towards funding women's sport, funding sport in general, and that's very encouraging. The more we can get, the more corporates we get on board, the more we can support India's view of becoming a dominant player in terms of the world stage. And the minister's made a very big statement in terms of wanting to be a top 10 nation in 2028. And in order to do that, it can't only be the government that comes on board. It needs to be corporates that come on board to support broadcasters. Those are the kind of support we need. I personally think that women's sport is an untapped resource, and if we want to achieve probably 20 to 30 medals in the Olympic Games, but certainly women are going to play a very, very big part in that particular equation. So going out there, I think a lot of people understand that, and I think you'll start seeing a shift towards more corporates coming on board and supporting women.
Thank you, Roshni. Missed out a little bit on what you were saying in between, but I'm assuming it was largely that you were fairly gung-ho about the kind of inputs and support that's coming in from across, barring, of course, this crazy year, thankfully coming to an end. Which now takes me to Sanjog. I think he's been actively involved in Khelo India, which is an ambitious grassroots space where we're looking at identifying talent, giving them a platform. And in your experience on this particular event and initiative from the government, did you feel that there were specific attempts made to both facilitate and expand women participation, girl participation?
Oh, definitely. And I think that there are three pillars on which this entire ecosystem stands, which is this participation ecosystem, right? There is obviously the need for inspiration, which comes from athletes like Nikhat and many other women athletes being seen on screen, as Sharda said, and seen more of, right? You want to see their stories. You don't just want to see them play. You want to see how they had to overcome hardships and all kinds of challenges to get there, because that's really the relatability quotient of that inspiration. Then, there is the whole information aspect, which is there, and there is information and there is misinformation, right? I think Nikhat spoke about the kind of things she had to hear from people around her about why she should not play sport, or for that matter, the misinformation or the lack of information there is around sport as a career, right? The fact that you can have sport or you can build a career in sport even if you don't continue playing that sport beyond the point, because you could potentially be behind the scenes. You could be a journalist, you could be in broadcasting, you could be in sports management. So I think the passion for sport leading to more than just on-field avenues is, again, information, the kind of information that's needed to be disseminated a lot more, that sport can be a career in the long term. The third bit is the incentives, right? And I think what Khelo India does is it builds an incentive program for girls to continue their participation and excel in sport. And I think it's the combination of inspiration, information, and incentives that can really power participation in sport and also create sustained participation. Because we also see girls playing but dropping out very quickly between the ages of 8 to 12. A lot of the listening sessions that we do with fans and female fans, and when we talk to them about why did they lose their connection with sport when they used to play early, it's typically reasons like, and I'm not going to mince words, issues of complexion, what Nikhat spoke about, scarring in sport and a bruise in sport, and schools preferring to send girls to home science than to let them be a part of the PT class or play a sport. So I think, it's important for girls to get inspired to play, have information on how they can, and information not just to them, but to society at large, that sport is a worthwhile passion to have, even for girls. And then there is, of course, the need to build incentives at all levels, starting from something like the Khelo India initiative, which gets girls or gives girls a marker to aim for. And I think that's really what is needed in almost all parts of our ecosystem to get girls to play more, stay connected with sport, and continue to grow in their sports careers.
Thank you, Sanjog. I think that was very well put, the three pillars. And I think at least that at a structure, it helps us, expect progress on each of those pillars. So thank you for that. Sharda, in your time with the pen and paper and getting insights and conversations and interviews with athletes, how do you see both the men or the male athlete versus the female athlete when you are speaking with them and you want to get insights from them and you are learning from them about their stories? What is that difference that emerges in your experience?
I think because I belong to sort of the quieter generation, I think it was easier for us to chat with women athletes. They would say things to you far more openly. And with the men, it just was a question of time. Because at the end of it, once you figure out, an athlete figures out that you really want to know about who they are, what they think, what is their approach to the sport they play, they tend to be fairly I mean, if you've not gone behind the sorry, Neha, if you've not gone behind the massive wall, the gatekeepers of their managers and their brand managers and so on, it's easy to chat with both men and with women. I had a really fantastic time just before COVID, talking to all the women of the hockey team who was in Bangalore. And for them, they said something that a male athlete would never say in India. They said, look, when we are here in camp, we love being here because it means we don't have to, we are not judged on what we are wearing. We are not judged how we are sitting. We are not judged on anything. We can talk loudly. We can make a noise. We are not at home with, the whole community around you looking at you and saying you should wear this, you should walk like this, you should talk like this. So the kind of freedom that women get when they take to sport at whatever level they tend to do, and together that when they are their own tribe, it was quite moving to listen to that kind of a conversation, which you would never hear from men. You'd hear other kind of things. I just wanted to also go back to what Rushdi was just saying. The study that he's talking about that's being done about the impact of being female in elite sport is about very simple things like menstruation and iron deficiency at the time of menstruation. You would think that there would be thousands of papers on this because sport has been played professionally now for more than 25, 30 years, but there's not. And it's such a common thing. So women athletes don't even have access to sort of the respect given to them by science to say, listen, let's figure out whether it's easy for you to box, wrestle, jump, run when you've got your period. Which is, I think there's one more study or maybe two more, but the one that's happening at the IIS is it's mind blowing. That is mind-blowing, number one. And secondly, that is the only thing that's happened in India in all these years is just bizarre. Because we've always had athletes, since the time of PT Usha. And you just heard Anju Bobby George's crazy story yesterday about how she won a world championship medal on one kidney and she could take pain.
Yes.
Shabnam, are you there?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm just, can you hear me?
Yes, now we can.
Sorry, again, Wi-Fi, the bane of our panel discussions. Neha, last question to you before we wrap up. The Olympics, Commonwealth, Asian Games, we've seen, of course, higher women participation, larger women contingents. We're, of course, also seeing far more medals, right? In your in your conversation with clients and companies and brands, is that is possibly, of course, one of the key reasons why they're looking at women athletes, or as being a support, as being people who can stand for each of these brands. What do you see in the future, Tokyo Olympics, and do you expect that to continue? Is this just a fly in the pan, or we are here to stay? What's your view?
I think we're absolutely here to stay, Shabnam. And I think what has started about 5 years ago is just the beginning of a long journey. There is more and more quality performance coming out of female athletes due to various reasons. I mean, everyone present here is part of that support system, right from Sharda, building awareness around these athletes, helping them to succeed, right from where IIS is actually understanding the fact that one size does not fit all. You need to have customized solutions for female athletes, and it starts at a very young age. So I think all of these aspects are building towards the medal prospects, which would be that end result that everyone's looking at. And I think that is where people, unfortunately, what happens is people only tend to start noticing these things when they make the front pages and when they make news or when they get the medals. But the journey is a far more longer journey that one needs to take, and it all needs to happen simultaneously in the system for people to actually see women in mainstream sports getting that due recognition, getting that due performance, and hence thereafter, as a byproduct, the brands looking at them as viable solutions in terms of partnering with them. Today, if you look at an example of PV Sindhu or even Nikhat, I think it's the performance which has eventually paid for people to see them and notice them and make them those aspirational role models for younger girls and all sports people alike. So it's the beginning of a journey. It's definitely not a flash in the pan, and it has to get better as we go along.
Thank you, Neha. Encouraging words and optimistic words, and hopefully very realistic words. I'm going to be a little greedy here, and before we close, Rushdi, I've heard about this amazing study that IIS has done, and I was wondering if you could very quickly help us sort of understand some of the learnings, insights, way forwards. I'm grateful, and I'm sure all of us here would love to hear this.
Yeah, I mean, it's an ongoing study, so we're still collecting data, and we continue to collect data all the time. So we call it the Female Athlete Project, and the purpose of the project is to initiate, drive, and conduct interventions to support female athlete health. So, we take into account, their menstrual cycles, we take into account their weight, we take into account their psychological, state, and it all filters around the female athlete triad, which is around, menstrual dysfunction, bone density challenges, low energy availability. And that has negative impacts. All three of those have negative impacts. Menstrual dysfunction could lead to infertility, decreased immune function, low energy deficit. They won't be able to train properly, bone density, stress fractures, that kind of thing. And we take, we collect all this information, and we've got our head of athlete performance health, Soumya Kula, who actually collects this information on a regular basis from all the athletes. And in fact, we've got the girls, the female athletes, they work within the project themselves. They encourage other, newer female athletes, new inductees on how it should be done, how the information should be collected. And we take a multidisciplinary approach to this, where we have the coaches on board, we have got the physiologists on board, we've got a sports psych on board if we need to. We have a nutritionist that will provide interventions where we're noticing very low caloric intake. And all this is around ensuring that, female athletes have optimal health, take into account the specific physiology that and the physiological conditions that female athletes take into that they would encounter. But we've got all this information, and we've got what we call an evidence tree. So if X happens, then we follow this particular protocol. If a female athlete misses two particular period twice a month, she has to see a nutritionist, plus, we'll start looking at reducing the training load. If she misses 3 a month, we'll call in a medical expert, for example, and, provide her with a specific nutrition plan. When necessary, have a chat to the sports psychologist, take her off training completely. These are just some of the things that are happening at the moment. As I said, it's an ongoing study. It's an ongoing intervention process. It's a living environment, and fortunately, we're also very fortunate that we've got a strong and dynamic young female lead in this particular project. So, as I said, it's ongoing. We continue to monitor our female athletes. We continue to educate them. It's not taboo to speak about it. I mean, we speak about it with the athletes all the time, and it's part of what we do in terms of encouraging our young female athletes to be confident and able to speak about things that would previously not have been spoken about. So, we're very excited. As Sharda said, it's probably something that is long overdue. And, we're more than happy to present that to different role players. And we have around the country already at different at different institutes, and as well as presenting it at some global conferences also.
Well, that'll be great, because this will be, like you were saying, I think path-breaking. When do you think you'll be ready?
I'll have to catch up with Soumya. I know they're close to publishing right now, so probably in the new year. I don't know the exact time frame, but like I said, they've collected enough data, and the data has been collected over a period of more than 1 year. And like I said, we're very proud of the fact that the athletes are involved in it. The athletes are champions of it also, which is very important.
Excellent. Thank you so very much. We look forward to reading and understanding and learning from you on this. So, love to have have had all of you here. I am very, very certain that 50 years hence, I know my daughter is growing up in a space and an environment where they don't even know what gender equality conceptually means, because they're all they consider themselves as equal to do what they want. There are no such things as male bastions. So 50 years down the line, we are going to have a FICCI seminar. We're going to have a panel, and the discussion there is going to be, how do we get males to come back to sports, and because that's been overtaken by women, and they're just not able to compete, and they therefore have a huge complex coming up. So that I am probably not going to be there in, but I know Nikhat, Neha, you guys are definitely going to be part of this panel saying, हमारे टाइम में ऐसा नहीं था, आदमी लोग तो जाके सब खेलते थे, सब कुछ करते थे. So on that note, and I'm very optimistic, thank you. You guys have been such an amazing panel. Nikhat, Neha,
Sharda, Rushdie, and Sanjog had to run. But thank you all. Delightful. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you, Shabnam.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.